Hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. I think almost any age group can have a go at this. Most people like doodling with a pen and you don't need an awful lot of equipment. We're looking at an artist called William Morris and I'll talk about him in a minute, but I'm just going to show you the materials that you're going to need. You're going to need a square of white paper, approximately 15 centimetres by 15 centimetres or 14 centimetres by 14 centimetres. That's the smaller one, or you could do it slightly larger. For the oldies it's 6 by 6, but you don't want it bigger than that. You need as fine a black pen as you can find. If you haven't got a black pen, you could use a blue biro. We just have to make do with what we've got in the house these days. And you need one colour, a felt tip pen, but you've got to choose the colour. You need to like the colour. Sometimes it's hard to draw a square, especially for young ones. So find a card that you can draw around, and that will make your perfect square. So you might have some birthday cards in that you're ready to send to somebody, or some old cards that you can find somewhere. But then you can just draw around the card and that will give you the right shape. I'm just going to move the camera so that you can see a bit more of the board. So bear with me. Okay, so we have William Morris here, born in 1834, lived in a village just outside of London, but very wealthy. He came from a family who had 9 children. He trained to be an architect, but once he started work as an architect, he decided no, he was much more interested in art and craft. He was somebody who thought that everybody should have beautiful things in their house. And so his famous saying is, have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. And that he firmly believed. But of course, in Victorian times, not everybody could afford to have such beautiful things in their house. But he was one of the pioneers of designing wallpaper, fabrics, tiles, and especially he was interested in illustrating books and manuscripts. And so we're going to have a go today at looking at manuscripts. If you look in a very, very old Bible, often the first letter in the Bible will be illustrated. And let me see if I can show you what he wanted to do. It's a very heavy book, children. So, if we look at this, the first letter is what we call illuminated. So it's drawn especially large, and around it it has beautiful leaves and flowers. And so that's what we're going to have a go at today. We're going to try and do a beautiful illuminated letter. And so you won't be able to see the detail on this, but you get beautiful manuscripts like this. Now the first thing you've got to do is decide on a letter, and the letter should be the first name, your first letter of your alphabet of your name. So these are examples that I found that children must have just left behind. So it's quite handy that I've found them because they take a long time to do. If you look at these are examples of the letters that William Morris designed, and that is a beautiful page of one of his books. The first thing you've got to do, let me put this up for you, is to draw your letter. Now your letter hasn't got to be a straightforward capital letter. You've got to make it a bit special. And so you've got to look to try and draw something which is a little bit different in terms of a letter. So this is a Roman type of letter. But you could, children, have a go at something a little bit more difficult and try a Gothic letter. So you have these capital letters here. I've drawn just an A. The first thing you have to do is to draw your letter within your square. So you have to draw your letter within the square, but you have to do it in pencil. That's the only thing you're going to draw in pencil today. The letter has to be drawn lightly in pencil, because then we're going to decorate all around the letter with lots of plants and creatures, butterflies, bees, flowers, anything that you can find that you think would be nice in your picture to illustrate it. And on this now, I'm going to show why it's got to be in pencil and it's got to be very light, because at the end you must rub things out. So, for example, here you might want the stem to come into your letter. So if I can do this. So your stem, it's a bit difficult drawing up here actually, but anyway, we'll manage. So your stem is going through the letter. Your stem's going through the letter. So if you had continued that line, then you couldn't have the stem going, feeding into the actual letter. Like here, look, there, that stem is going to be. It's going into the actual letter. You might want a leaf or a flower to be actually on the letter itself. And these are the more difficult ideas for maybe grown-ups and older children. But the work that's here was done by Year 6 children. So they would be 10 to 11-year-olds. So all you've got to remember is that when you're doing your letter, don't do it with a black pen. Do it with a very light pencil. And remember that you may need to rub out some of the lines where the stems are coming into and out of the letter here. Once you've drawn your letter, decided where you're going to have it, you then start to work on the letter. It's very time consuming, but very soothing, and it passes lots of time. This is an exceptionally beautiful example that a child did. And if you look into it, you will see there are toadstools, butterflies, bees, flowers, a feather, all sorts. And this one, although they haven't yet finished it, they haven't coloured their initial letter, It's absolutely amazing when you look into the detail of it. All the beautiful leaves, all the tendrils and everything swirling. The one thing you have to remember is that you don't want any straight lines. All the lines that you do have to be intertwining around. So everything is curving and swirling around the flowers, around or over stems and so on. I've put some examples of his fabric here. It's still very popular today. In John Lewis the other week, they had William Morris wallpaper and William Morris fabric. So it's still very, very popular, especially if you go into hotels. You'll often see the fabric made into bedspreads and curtains and wallpaper. So he was an amazing designer that years and years later we still love all of his work. You need to pause the video and you need, especially the children, to go out and collect as many kinds of leaves and flowers that you can from the garden. If you haven't got access to a garden, some of you might not, then you might have some house plants. So you might have a house plant that you could take a leaf off and copy that. Or you might have a very strange plant like that with very strange flowers or leaves on. Again, if you haven't access to a garden, you can just look for in magazines and on the internet pictures of flowers and leaves. But the leaves are the most important thing. You might want to incorporate a butterfly here, this kind of shape. Again, if you haven't got access to a garden, you might have some pictures in a magazine. I'm going to put up some leaves and flowers that I've just found in my garden today. So I've just been out in the garden and found these flowers and leaves. I'll draw some things that you can incorporate into your design. So you might like to do a butterfly. So I'm just drawing very quickly. This isn't very well balanced, so it's not very good. So you might want to put a nice butterfly in there. You might want to put all different kinds of leaves. So if we draw that leaf, but it's very nice if you can start to look at the leaves and see exactly what's happening. See, it's a bit difficult for me drawing over here, I have to say, but a very simple leaf. And then you want to draw the vein in between. You might want to draw some kind of a toadstool. Yours should be really beautiful. Mine are a bit not very good because I'm not well balanced here. Just have a look at your leaves and your flowers, all sorts of flowers. I picked these primulas, pansies. You can always pause the video and copy some of the leaves and flowers. If you can't get out, you can always have a go at that. You might have a stem that has leaves coming off. Right, so you get the idea. The important thing is that you try and interconnect everything with lovely stems. Whoops, can't see up there. So everything that you do has to be swirling around. The thing to remember in the end is that the background has to be filled either with tiny dots if you can, or with tiny marks. So you make tiny marks. So all the spaces that you have, I'll do it bigger here so you can see, all the spaces that are left, you must fill with the tiniest of dots, so that sometimes you might leave something undrawn so it stands out white. Sometimes, I'll look at these others with you, people like to put dark areas in. So you may like to do that. You may like to think of all different kinds of patterns that you can make. But can you see that this one isn't finished because these spaces haven't been filled in with marks? So they've got to finish that yet and try and fill that in. Oops. At the very end, you take your colour and you start to colour, and then your work will start to come alive, really. I won't spend a long time because it takes a lot of video up. But you colour your letter in at the very end. I'll stress again that you only draw the letter with a pencil, then start straight away with your pen. So all this work is just done with a pen. Don't try and draw it with a pencil and go over with a pen. It just doesn't work. Your best marks are made freely and swerving straight away. It's an idea that if you've enjoyed doing it, you might like to do one for all the family. Keep them for Christmas. You could do everybody's initial letter. Keep them and mount them. That's just a little frame from Dunelm that I stuck that one that somebody did in. But you can see that you could keep them, and that would make a very nice Christmas present. Children either for mummy and daddy, or older people for different relations. Okay, so I hope you enjoy this. I always enjoy this lesson because everybody is successful. At the end of the day, you'll have produced something which is lovely, and you can go on and try different letters, different styles, and so on. Okay.